And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Kingdom Builder, which has gotten a lot of hype recently, a lot because of its connection with Donald Vaccarino, who you might know as the inventor or the designer of Dominion and all of its various expansions. Kingdom Builder is not a card game, it's a board game in which you're going to be trying to place out your different buildings in order to either match some type of predetermined objectives on the board in order to get more abilities and score victory points at the end of the game. It plays 2 to 4 players and takes about 45 minutes and is what I would call a light Euro game. So with that said, why don't we take a look at what comes inside this box, how the game plays, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on it. The first thing you're going to see when you have Kingdom Builder is that you're going to have a bunch of boards. And on each of the boards on the back, you're going to have a score track. And so each game you can just use one of these boards as your score track, and other boards will be used to set up the game. And what you're going to do is you're going to shuffle these boards, and then at the beginning of each game, you're going to reveal 4 of them. So I would reveal 4 of these boards, and I would put them together to form the board. So I'll set that up, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So now I've revealed my 4 boards, and you can see that the board is composed of different types of terrain. You have deserts and grasslands, flower fields and forests and chasms, and then you have mountains and water. And mountains and water are areas that you won't be able to place on throughout the game, but the rest of those types of terrains you will. You'll also see that on the boards you have castles. They're surrounded by silver, and these are going to be areas that you're going to score points at the end of the game for being next to. You'll also see areas that are surrounded by gold, and these are areas that when you build next to them are going to give you special abilities. So for example, we have over here the tavern, and the tavern gives you the special ability that at the end of a line, so you'll have different lines of buildings on the board, on your turn you can use your taverns in order to build one settlement at the end of a line. So essentially, if you had a line of settlements out here, you could build a settlement at the end of this line on your turn by using your inn. And these different locations will give you different abilities. And when you do flip these boards over, you're also going to have some tiles that can go out to remind you of all the special abilities. So we have Stonehenge here, or what's called the Oracle, which allows you to build a settlement on a hex of the same terrain type as your terrain card that you'll play for the turn, and this will make more sense in a moment. Or we have the Barn here, which allows you to move one of your existing settlements to a hex of the same terrain type as the card that you played on your turn. And as I said, you're going to reveal 4 tiles, and there will be 4 of these out per game that you'll set these tiles aside for, and you'll be able to determine what those do. When you flip those over, you're actually going to put out special tokens onto each of the types on the board. So for example, these tokens would go here on the Oracle, and these ship tokens would go over here on the harbor. We'd have 2 tokens on each of the barns here, so we'd find the barn, there's a barn there and a barn here. And we'd have 2 tokens on each of our taverns, so we have a tavern here and a tavern here. The first 2 players to play adjacent to these spots are going to get those tokens and use the special abilities throughout the game. Now, how does the game play? Let's go over that and take a look. So at the beginning of each game, and this is what makes each game different, is you're going to have this deck of cards. And you're going to reveal 3 of these cards for each game after shuffling it, and these are going to determine your objectives for the game. So let's say I reveal these 3 cards. We have the Merchant, which says, connect locations and castle hexes. Well, we've seen the castle hexes, and we see the locations here. What you're going to want to try and do is build a continuous line of settlements using your buildings, and I'll show you how to get those onto the board, in order to connect these 2. And for each one you connect, you're going to get 4 gold when you connect them. Gold is victory points at the end of the game. You also have the Fisherman in this case, which says build settlements on the waterfront. So you're going to want to build settlements next to the water. And it says you get 1 gold for each of your settlements, each of your buildings, that you build adjacent to water. And then the third one says build settlements on many horizontal lines. Alright, well, we have vertical lines and we have horizontal lines. You're going to want to build settlements on as many of these horizontal lines as possible, getting 1 gold for each one that you do. But it could have been, for example, the Farmers, which says build settlements on all sectors, and you score points equal to 3 times the number of buildings you have on the sector with the least of your buildings. There's all kinds of different ones that are going to change from game to game. Now the game itself plays very, very simply. all you need to do is build your settlements and take into account what the objectives are. Each turn, you're simply going to have one card. You don't choose cards, you get a card per turn. On your turn, you flip this card up, and this is a desert terrain. So it says that I have to play 3 of my settlements onto desert terrain. If you have any settlements on the board next to desert, you have to start playing next to your own settlements. Otherwise, you can place wherever you want. Now, at the beginning of the game, I have no settlements on the board, so I can place my desert wherever I want. And I'm probably going to want to place next to these buildings in order to get different abilities. So I would place here, here, and here, and I would take this ability on my next turn. I could use the ability of my tavern. And that would say on the next turn that I can build one settlement at the end of a line, like I said before. So here's a line, I could build a settlement there on my next turn by using this tavern, and I could use it every turn from then on. Then the next player would get their card, or they'd already have their card, and they'd flip it over. And they would have grasslands. And they would go and they would build on grasslands somewhere. Let's say they built over here next to this tavern over here. So they've built their 3, they pick up their tavern. And then, again, back to the first player. So the first player gets another card, and they're going to flip it over. And now they have to build on flowers. Well, they are next to flowers right here. So they would take their 3 buildings, and they would place them out onto the flowers that are adjacent to where they already are. So let's say they placed like this. And then again, back to the second player who flips another card. We have flowers for them as well. Now, they're not next to any flowers, so they can place anywhere in a flower spot on any of the boards. So they have free choice of where to go, and this is really one of the key points of the game, is you want to put yourself in scenarios where you aren't able to play where your card says that you have to play, or you aren't able to play adjacent to where you're already supposed to have to play. So now that I can't place here, I have free reign over the board. And let's say maybe I want to go over here and get next to this castle. So I would play my flowers over here. And the game is going to continue on in this manner until one player has played all of their buildings. After that, each player gets one more turn, going back to the first player. So the player to the right-hand side of the first player is going to get the last turn. And at the end of the game, you're going to score points dictated by the cards that you revealed at the beginning of the game, and 3 points for being adjacent to castles. And that's Kingdom Builder, and as you can tell from my review, there isn't a whole lot to it. Essentially, you reveal 3 cards. Those dictate what you're trying to do for the game. You flip a card, play your settlements, and try and score as many points as possible. And while that's not bad, it's not a bad, simple game, I have to admit I was disappointed. I am a big Dominion fan, and so I know I wasn't expecting Dominion, but I think that kind of set a really high standard for this game for me. Even though they're not related, even though they don't share mechanics, for some reason it instilled in me this expectation of an amazingly deep and interactive game. While not difficult, Dominion, it still is highly interactive and highly variable from game to game. While this does carry over some of the variation in the cards that you reveal each time, I still think that that's limited and that the game is a little too simple for my tastes. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad game. I think this would be a pretty good game for introductory gamers, for people just getting into the hobby, or for people who just enjoy lighter fare. But for me, it really just didn't live up to my expectations, and I think the hype that kind of surrounded it due to its designer. So if you're a lighter gamer, or you're trying to introduce people to the gamer hobby, I definitely suggest taking a look at Kingdom Builder as one of those types of games. But if you're looking at something, or looking for something with the complexity, or the variability of Dominion from the same designer, you're not going to find it in Kingdom Builder.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.